Welcome to the Resonate Church Missoula podcast. This podcast exists to equip and encourage the members of Resonate Church to get the gospel to people, people to community, and community to mission. Thanks for listening. All right, Jerry and Austin, we're sitting around after teardown on Sunday. We just got all wrapped up and got the trailer delivered, and I wanted to talk to you guys about the content this Sunday. This is something that I want to do semi-regularly throughout the year, is just have some extended sermon reflection and conversation and application for our people, because the Sunday sermon is just a 30-minute time, and usually there's a lot more that could be talked about and could be applied to our lives than can be covered in those 30 minutes. So this Sunday was pretty pointed at freshmen, but as I was writing it, I thought this applies pretty broadly to everybody. I don't know anybody, including myself, that this doesn't apply to in some way. And so the main idea for you guys, so Jerry, you were there, Austin, you were out at the barbecue, but you had the live stream going, so you probably heard the majority of this. But the main idea was that our culture, especially our younger, more progressive culture, but really it's our entire culture, is pushing this worldview called expressive individualism, which we're going to talk about in this conversation, where basically reality is defined by your internal world, and then you express it, and you express it to the world, and that's your identity, that's your reality. And so that's the worldview being pushed by our culture, and then the Bible provides a different worldview, where ultimate reality is found in God, and we find our place in this world by submitting to Him, His rule, His reign, coming under His authority. And so that plays out differently in different structures, different families, communities, churches, things like that. But that was kind of the gist of the sermon, and then in the second half, it turned into straight gospel. That was the goal of the sermon, was to spend the majority of the second half just talking about what Jesus has done for us, and why the uniqueness of the gospel makes Christianity uniquely able to fulfill that longing that we all have, that expressive individualism cannot fulfill. So you guys were there. I want to get your kind of broad takes, what stood out to you, and then in a few minutes we'll get into the expressive individualism concept a little more deeply. What do you think?
Yeah, man, it was great. It was really great to get to tune into the live stream and get to sort of like uninterruptedly think through what you were saying. I think, and I think a lot of people who've been in our church for ever probably were thinking first Sunday back with students, we're like, here we go, same message again. But it was a pivot this year, in a lot of ways, and
the funny thing about that is,
correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're right. That's how people think. Every year is a pivot.
Okay.
So every year, everyone says, I thought it was going to be the same thing that it is every year, but this year was different. Yeah. But every year is different.
It's good to know.
So it is the same, Rhodes.
So it is the same. It's the same.
Same issue, different. Yeah. Right. Same issue, but no one's right.
Right.
Yeah.
But continue.
So I expected to hear the same thing, and it's a message we've heard, right, laced into a lot of good schools of thought in the Christian circles that a lot of us probably dabble in. But you said as you were writing it, you were thinking, man, this applies to all of us. And I was sitting there just thinking, man, this applies to me. As we were going through it, and it's like, yeah, I've done a lot of work in shifting my life out of believing this thing. But something I thought of, and you say this often, is like, it's the water we're swimming in.
Yeah.
And I was thinking to myself, if it's the water you're swimming in, you have to constantly remind yourself of what you're aiming for,
right,
and constantly evaluate, am I drinking the juice, or am I moving the ball forward in what I'm convicted to move towards, and what I think is best for family and for myself. And so, what stood out to me is like the message I've heard, whether it was last year in August at the same time, or over and over in huddles, or in woven into other sermons. Man, I was like, great reminder. We will never outgrow this reminder And I think the way you delivered it was really helpful. I don't know if I can put my finger on it necessarily, but it just felt saturated in the gospel. It felt like a very clear gospel. Like, this is the gospel, right? And this is the gospel in the frame of this individualism context. Instead of just calling the thing out and saying that's wrong, but here's the gospel: Jesus died for your sins. You wove this thought into what you even just said. I loved how you quoted like the first sentence of the Bible: "In the beginning, God." Yeah. Right? That's such a helpful framework to remind us that we are just part of His story. Right. Yeah, we're on a journey to glorify Him, and man, what a great reminder it was tonight.
Yeah, that's good to hear.
Yeah,
I often think that we have a unique opportunity to remind students that they're being sold something by colleges, right. like what they've signed on to and what they've just begun and embarked on if they're a freshman is not like a charity work by the University of Montana. Like right. they have been sold something very expensive, and right. so the university is hawking their wares and will be for the next 4 years. Right. But they don't come out and tell you that. They don't right. say, hey, we're here to sell individualism. We're here to sell this right. particular worldview, and it's going to cost you $50,000 a year or whatever it is.
Right. In fact, they tell you, or they give you the impression that what they are selling you is just the truth, just right. the reality, just yeah. the education that everybody agrees is true.
Yeah.
Like they don't see their bias
right.
in any way.
And maybe even more, they pitch it as an investment. You give us this money, and it will develop you so intensely personally, you're going to be rich and satisfied by the time you leave. You're going to have a great job, you're going to find your wife, right. and all of that is going to be a product of the money that you've given us and the time that you spent with us. Right. When in reality, most students will graduate in crippling amounts of debt, right. very lonely, completely directionless.
And they will not get a job in their major, and they will struggle to pay back their debt for years, maybe decades.
Yeah,
the data
us
is
included,
bleak.
maybe. But
the data is bleak on the efficacy of college as a system.
Yeah. And I think, that's just a side product of what you start to mention in your sermon. Yeah, the university will sell you this sort of idea, and it always reminds me like, this is not a benevolent transaction, know. But usually I think just personally to keep things fresh, because I think I have like a 95% Preston Rhodes attendance rate for sermons. But to keep things fresh for me, I usually sit in the back and think, okay, I'm a freshman. I don't love Jesus. I've never been to church. Like, what am I thinking when Preston is saying this? Yeah. And a lot of times I often think like, this is probably the first time I've ever heard something like this. And it was like Austin was saying, very gospel saturated. But I was trying to think, okay, does Jesus do this? Does he express himself this way? And I think the answer was resoundingly no. Like I was just thinking in the Garden of the Gethsemane, like not my will, but the Father's will be done. That is totally the antithesis of expressive individualism. At no point in Jesus' ministry does he say, here I am, here's the way I do things, and it's better than yours. Right. The entire thesis of his ministry is the Son of Man has not come to be served, but to serve. You know? And that, like I said, that's the opposite of expressive individualism.
It's laying down your life for others instead of asserting yourself in society, making others lay down their preferences and rights and desires for
and
you.
even when he goes to the cross, it's in submission to God. So he, even in his perfection, he's modeling the submission that we're supposed to do. So as I was sitting there with my freshman hat on and my lanyard dangling out of my pocket, I was thinking about what it would be like to hear this for the first time. And the more that you read about Jesus in his own words, the more you're like, yeah, this can't be. If this is perfection and this is what we're supposed to be like, then what I'm being sold by the university is not it. Like that,
Right.
it's actually the opposite of what I should be doing.
Right.
And not just because the dude on stage is telling me, like that those are the words of what the guy on stage is telling me of the guy on stage,
Right.
you know? So that's what I was thinking about from the back seats, from the back rows this week.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, that's a helpful lens to see it through. Jerry, so you sitting through this sermon, and then you've thought about this idea for years. We've talked about this for years in various forms. But how would you explain expressive individualism? Let's say somebody's listening to this and they didn't watch the sermon, or they're unfamiliar with the term. How would you frame some of that concept?
Yeah, I feel like it's always hard to take those like psychological definitions and make them accessible, because like you were saying, it is the water we swim in, but like when you zoom out and try to see the forest for the trees, it's hard to understand and nail down like the words that we can commonly use for it, I guess. I just think of it most accessibly in examples, but I think of it as like anytime you are trying to assert your identity as you've defined it on the society around you. Like anytime you're trying to say like, this is who I've discovered I am, and this is my display of it. And a lot of it can either be positive or negative. But anytime I think we try to derive our own identity from what we desire or what we believe or an experience we've had or whatever, and just make that the core tenet of who we are, and then you just add layers of your expression, whether that's Instagram or artwork, like in your house or on your body or whatever. Those are all you trying to telegraph to the world, this is who I am, see me for what I am. And I think that's the, and like you were saying in the sermon, like it's all around you. The more it's one of those things where once you see it, you can't stop seeing it. Like it's everywhere.
Right. In prepping the sermon, I started making a list of examples, the list I used in the series, and then for the rest of the week, that list was growing in my mind. It was just like, oh wait, everything around us, everything we do, everything in our society is in one way or another connected to this expressive individualism concept, which we'll probably talk about a little bit more later. Yeah, I think that's a good definition. You're focusing on the expression of the person's truth or identity or self-understanding as the core tenet, which I think is an important piece.
Yeah, and I think it's almost like grown-up show and tell. Like you find the one thing that you feel like is special about you and not anybody else. Yeah. And you're like, okay, everybody look at this thing. This is me. Yeah. This is what makes me special. This is how I'm different from everybody else. And usually it's not that impressive, honestly.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking about other, like, just simple ways to think of it, to conceptualize this term. One thing I was thinking about was just like the drive to be unique. Everybody wants to be different. Everybody wants to be unique. You want your parties to be unique. You want your wedding to be unique. You want your house to be unique. You want everything. It just has to be a little bit different. I want to give my flavor to everything. And it's interesting to ask yourself, why? Why do I want to be unlike everybody else? Why do I want to have this sense of uniqueness? And it finds its roots here, because you're trying to express something that you believe is down deep inside you, instead of conforming yourself to a larger structure or an institution that's around you.
Yeah, it's interesting as you guys say that, because I'm thinking to myself too, as someone who is maybe more naturally bent that way than you two. I think it's funny to reflect on. I think that ends so quickly in most people because they want everyone around them to do the same thing once they figure out, okay, here's this unique thing I do. Now I want all my friends to come do it with me, right? Or else it's just, why am I doing it? Yeah. You know, at least in a lot of cases, it almost is self-defeating, right? Yeah. It's like instantly.
That's the trouble with pervasive uniqueness. Once everyone's unique, no one's unique.
Yeah.
So because we're all the same.
Is you're running.
So you lose your.
Yeah. You're running in this rat race to try to new car, cool new grill, whatever the thing is that's going to set me apart. Barefoot shoes, if I'm going to call someone out, right?
Yourself.
Gluten-free, I'll hit double down on myself.
It was just a phase.
That was a phase, yeah. But that like, I'm doing this now, because no one wants to sit in being the only one doing it. Because I think it goes back to what you're saying, or what we've sort of landed on, or circled around, is like, we weren't designed in this way. We were designed for community. We're designed for structure, the most beautifully expressed, obviously, in the church and God's church, and getting to fall underneath His authority, because so we're working our way back to that. Because I think anyone who is truly unique and set apart is just lonely and sad.
So a lot of this concept, as I was studying it, this stuff didn't make it into the sermon, but as I'm studying this concept, I related it to Robert Bella and 50 years ago, but it has its roots way before that. So Jean-Jacques Rousseau was kind of one of the godfathers of this idea, 18th century philosopher, and what he argued, he had multiple books where he made this argument, but he was kind of the godfather of the idea that humans at our core are good. We are inherently good and flawless and perfect at our core, and then as we grow up, we accumulate brokenness. We accumulate the mess and the dysfunction and the disorder that all adult humans express in the world. And so he would say the less societal influence one can take on, the more perfect that person is going to be. So he would, you may have heard of the term, the noble savage. That's a Jean-Jacques Rousseau term. So he would say the savages, meaning the uncivilized, maybe the Native Americans when Columbus landed here, when the settlers landed here, or just tribal people, ancient people who haven't yet been tainted by civilization. He would say that there is a higher nobility, higher morality, where they're just peaceful and pure and holy, and because they haven't been tainted by this civilization that is so destructive to us. So Rousseau makes that argument, and his foundation is that humans are at our core good. We are good at our very deepest level, and if that's true, then this whole expressive individualism thing makes sense, because our goal should be to dig down to that core, right? If the core is the best thing about us, we got to get down to it. We got to dig in, look inside ourselves. But the Christian worldview is the exact opposite. Couldn't be more opposite. Where the Scripture teaches that we are depraved at our core. We are wicked at our core. We are sinful all the way down to our core, and our only hope for holiness or righteousness is outside of ourselves. Like Christ's righteousness is the only righteousness we could ever have access to, and it's only through imputed righteousness. Christ has to put it on us. We don't do it or earn it or find it in ourselves. So how do those ideas, rooting it back in Rousseau, the noble savage idea, what thoughts does that spur on? Besides the fact that the noble savage idea is the silliest theory anyone could ever come up with.
I don't know. Anytime you say like better, that means there has to be a scale and there has to be a goal. Right. So if you're saying that humans are better in a certain condition, well, better for what and to what end? And once you start asking those questions, you have to get to God or a God.
Right.
But
better by what standard? Yeah,
and to do what thing? Yeah. But yeah, if humans are made, if the fullness of the human experience is to glorify God, you are not better off not knowing Him and not being in community. So you are not a better or more complete human in that condition at all.
Right.
So you could throw that one in the garbage pretty much immediately, I think.
Even if you bought the premise that pre-civilized people were less violent, more righteous, things like that, which is historical nonsense.
Yeah,
I mean, we've seen
that's kind of a non-starter.
We've seen in every culture across the world that civilization has brought with it civility. Like murder rates have gone down, rape rates have gone down. The world that the settlers landed in here was not a peaceful world. It was a bloodthirsty, cannibalistic, horrible world. So even if you accepted his premise there, you still run into the issue that you just talked about. If you accepted the premise that they are less murderous, they still don't know God.
Yeah.
They still are not striving toward godly aims or godly ends. Yeah, that's a good observation.
Yeah, I mean, my first thought is that seems really great. Like, if I could say that everything I wanted, everything I desired deep down was the ultimate good,
Right.
and my scale was based on my perception of reality,
Right.
and just me where I'm at, it seems so easy, right? Don't have to listen to anyone, don't have to follow the rules, I can do whatever I want, and our society is in actually a really unique point where we can get away with that without feeling the pain of it quickly, right? Where over history, there was an emperor who, didn't have the laws and the systems we have in play now, and you did something crazy, you're probably just going to jail, or you did something too far outside the rung of what this guy says is right, you're just going to die, right? And so I think our Western civilization it's been built around comfort. So this idea that you're talking about, Rousseau, is like, it just fits so well in where we find ourselves right now. Of like,
Yeah. Almost like convenient.
It's
That's convenient that
Yeah.
everything inside yourself is good and perfect.
Yeah.
And so you just get to do whatever you want all the time.
Yeah, and then you can subscribe to a little bit of Christianity, a little bit of Buddhist thought, and a little bit of whatever you want, whatever sounds good.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just and we live in the ultimate consumeristic world where anything that's quick and easy is what we know, and very little do we have to work hard or
we're not
go
forced
out
to
of our
settle
way
for hardly anything. We don't have to wait for hardly anything.
Yeah.
And so then when we're asked to settle or to wait or to do something we don't want to do regarding our purpose or our morality or something like that, it rubs against us.
Yeah.
Well, it also, the whole system just doesn't seem fluid. Like if somebody's been exposed to society, how do you cure them of that damage to their soul?
Right.
So the answer would be to isolate them, and that doesn't make anybody ever better. Like humans never get better in isolation. That's how we punish.
Right.
That's our most severe punishment for the worst of the worst criminals. And that's the worst thing we could think up to do to people.
No hermit has ever come back from a decade in the caves better than they were.
Better than we left them. So if the premise is, because to me, when I think of society, I just think of concentrations of people. Like, what has changed from when Columbus landed on the continent to now is that we all live way closer together with people who are way different from us. And so
and relatively peaceably.
Yeah. And so that would, I would define that loosely as community, right? And so I think that what Rousseau's thesis is community would be bad in that instance. And so the solution would be to isolate yourself from community, get away, uncivilize yourself, which again, has never made, like, if somebody was struggling, your first piece of advice wouldn't be to be like, hey, all your friends, just leave them, get as far away from everybody as you possibly can for as long as you can stand it. That'll make you better.
Well, but interestingly, that
I
is
think
a lot
I've
of
heard
the advice.
people counsel that.
That is a lot of the advice coming out of the
Yeah.
progressive therapy talk world.
Yeah.
Maybe not distance yourself from everyone, but cut off your toxic parents. Leave your friend group who's not letting you do everything you want to do.
Right.
Like they are literally advocating for removing yourself from the community that you need because that community
thinks different,
makes you uncomfortable.
says anything you don't.
Yeah.
Says anything you don't agree with or have to think more than an inch deep about.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So in the sermon, I talked about a few examples of ways that we see expressive individualism play itself out. I gave maybe 5 or 6 examples. But what are some other, as you guys were thinking about it, what are some other examples that we see in our world? Like what stands out to you? What do you think was a prominent example?
Yeah, that's, like I said, it's hard to like kind of nail down one or two, but I think I think, like I said earlier, I think the one that comes to mind immediately is like tattoos. Like you're taking something that's special or specific to you and displaying it prominently, like even like as prominently as it can, like on your face, on your hands, on your like something that other people can't not see. They can't opt out of. There's no getting to know you kind of process. I think that's because like our grandparents, they got tattoos to symbolize their connection to organizations, or like I was in the Navy, or even like negatively, like I went to this prison.
I don't know if
or
people
whatever.
in our generation know that like tattoos 50 years ago, 100 years ago, they existed, not as much as they do today. They existed, but they primarily were used to show your group identity. Yeah, I was in the Navy. I belong to this family. I have this family crest. I have this patriotic thing. Like, something like that.
And the history of that's even rooted in the Old Testament of the worship of other gods, right? Like for not only hundreds of years, but all the way back to thousands of years.
Right, like it's relatively new that we would use tattoos as a form of self-expression as opposed to group identification.
Yeah, but now it's like you can't not see my entire arm that has my whole life story and all my personal interests on it.
Right.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, like, don't get me wrong, sometimes really cool. I dig it. Like, looks great.
Yeah,
like
we're not making a moral claim on it, but it is an example of expressive individualism.
Yeah, that's like...
And it's so tangible, like when we put it in this context, like it's, wow, that's a really clear shift in culture.
Yeah. Or even, like on a similar vein, even your clothing, like what your logos or your choice of a brand or whatever you wear, like anything,
like all appearance stuff.
Anything that's
colors,
on you
length,
is an expression of what you want people to immediately notice about you. And I think the louder, the more desperate the plea to notice and observe and appreciate, either positively or negatively. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think all those sort of things.
The primary emphasis in fashion for a long time was fitting in. You want to fit in, you want to be respectable, you want to look the part, that kind of thing. And now it's way more about standing out. I want to be unique, I want to be recognized, I want people's attention due to my appearance. Yeah, that's a good one. What else?
Then as I maybe reflect on this for myself, but just like there's a culture of trends, and I think that like we talk about, I mean, I see this in the student world around language, right? Like, which is just like there's new words that people are using, or like hip acronyms or things like that, and I just think of all these trends that come up, and they seem to start in this like pursuit of, like, look at me, I'm set apart, I'm different, and then everyone picks it up, right? And so that revolving door feels to be like, I mean, gosh, I see it in, I just think of short form video and how all consuming that is with the way we parent, the way we think what something is healthy, or we, I'm like the biggest, I mean, I'm all about barefoot shoes, right? We'll go back to this, right? Short form video has had some influence on that, right? But I think of like, we had to buy this thing on Amazon because it's the best way to do this for our kids' snacks, or we have to make these 5 ingredient things, and it's just like there's so
well, but that's interesting. The compelling piece of those short form videos that get you to buy things and act on things and change your philosophies, the message is always, here's why our ancestors were stupid. Here's why those who came before us were bad. Here's why the food that our parents fed us was terrible. Now we need to do better for our kids. Or here's why the way that our parents and grandparents disciplined us was bad. Now we need to come up with a new way. Or here's, like, it's just this constant, it's not only disrespect, but a disregarding of the old things, the old institutions, the old traditions, and this desire I want to do it new. I want to pave a new way, do it a unique way.
When in reality, there's nothing new under the sun, right? Like everything's been done before in some sort of way, but it's this facade that I truly think this facade of we are so much more clever, or we've figured it out, come follow us, right? And it's this fake, we've made it, right? And it's this, whatever this next new video is, or whatever this next new idea is that's going to make my family healthier, or
and it's an arrogance thing.
Yeah.
To think I know better than all my ancestors.
Yeah.
I know better than all the institutions that came before
Yeah.
me. I'm going to pave my new way.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe related, but I think downstream of that, of expressive individualism and the mindset that it creates, I think it makes a pretty severe fear of commitment to place, to people, to career, to anything. Because if your whole identity is whatever allows me to fully express myself, you can't tie yourself down to a place, because what if this place doesn't have the job that is totally you, or fails to fit your vibe anymore, or whatever. You can't just be shackled by a church community or a place or this corporate job or whatever.
Commitment is a threat to expressive individualism.
Yeah, because
commitment as a concept.
Yeah, because then you're actually making roots that are going to have to be pulled if you start growing different branches that are reaching in a different direction. So,
which is tied to marriage stuff. That's why marriage rates are plummeting. Because why would I commit myself to this person if maybe in 5 years I don't like them?
Yeah,
maybe I'd like something different. Maybe my our love just faded.
Well, and I mean, the reality and the truth of the scenario is that if you are being sanctified by the Holy Spirit, you will be a different person in 5 years. Yeah. And if you are married, then you must learn to love that new person that's now different. Yeah, so it's not only like, maybe she'll be different in 5 years. It's like, no, God willing, and by my sweat, she will be different in 5 years.
And I will be different.
Yes, and our marriage will be new again. So that's the beauty and the pain, is like, it's not going to be like it was back when we first met and we first started dating, we first got married. Praise God, because we were sinful heathens, bro. God's making us into a new creation, and that means that we're new, and that means what we're doing together is new. So
that process of we're using marriage as an example, but this applies to lots more. Two sinners commit to one another, and then as they grow and they change and they mature and develop, things rub, right? There's frictions, there's disagreements and arguments, and you have to let some dreams die, and you have to figure out conflict. You do all that stuff. So because there's friction, you are forced to be sanctified. Your sanctification is a result of the friction. If you have no commitment, there's no friction, which seems like the good life, but really it just means there's no more sanctification. You will never have to grow or develop, because you're just going to get to do whatever you want all the time. So again, this doesn't just apply to marriage. Committing yourselves to things for the long term forces you to put to death your personal whims and desires and feelings and passions and things like that in favor of communal good, a good that is bigger than just yourself. And that's, in a lot of ways, that's what sanctification is. It's laying down your life for the good of others.
The good of God's kingdom.
Right.
Yeah, and I think there's some power in commitment. Not even, I mean, we've been talking about marriage, but even if you were single and graduating college, looking at what's next, it's like, what if I just fix this point in my life? What if I fix my location? And take that variable out and allow God to work through all the other things that he can work through in just this place. Because it's like, if you're trying to solve any other problem, the more variables you have, the less you can tell what is working and what's changing. But if you can fix a certain point and say, okay, God, the next 5 years of my life, I'm staying right here. These are my people. This is my place. And even if it's not Missoula, even if you're going to U of M, if you graduate and you're like, okay, God, I'm moving to Bellevue, Washington, and those are going to be my people, and that will be my place for 5 years. Hell or high water, I don't care. I think that there's some power in that to say, because if you're just always fluid, then it's like, well, you never know when God's calling you to a different place, because it's like, am I unhappy? Am I discontent?
Right.
Or is God actually calling?
It all starts to feel the same, because
yeah.
every time you get discontent, you feel like, I think God's calling me somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have no interpretive lens anymore.
Yeah. I go back to the paralysis of analysis idea, right? There's too many options. And you mentioned earlier, like, where our society is in a spot where it's like, not only do we live in proximity, in peace with one another, and we're so close physically, but also the interconnectedness of, we can take a plane anywhere in the country, we can see what our friends are doing across the world, and it's, I think once you eliminate, I think it's a really big factor. You said just eliminate one thing, but I think if you just really commit to where you're at, where God has you, especially if you've been in our community for 4 years or 2-3 years, and it's probably like nothing you've experienced before, right? There's a reality of that's a really good thing, and even another 2 years could be monumental, But yeah, if you take 4 years is such a short amount of time. I was talking to someone earlier. It was like, I'm only 4 years older than you, and I have 2 kids, and I've been married that whole time, right? I'm like been married for 4 years, and I'm only 4 years ahead of you. But those are some huge milestones to hit in 4 years. So, and I'm not even 30 yet. It's like, wow, how much potential is there in one place? I think that might be a unique to our culture of saying, I'm actually just going to stay here, force my way into a job here, instead of just following the job, right? I think that's a really another example of expresses individualism. Is all that matters is, am I happy in my job? Am I doing the job that makes me feel like my gifts are being used and all of this, or am I sacrificing that for the sake of my community?
Which is such a funny, like, our grandparents couldn't even comprehend that worldview.
No.
Do I like my job? Like,
it's a
what
job.
are you talking about? What do you mean, do I like my job? My job keeps my kids from starving. I love it. I love that about my job. Like, nobody likes their job. And now we can't hold a job if we don't love every part of it.
But the whole reason this conversation is even relevant is because if you are alive in the United States of America and the year of our Lord 2025, and you are in your early 20s, you are for the first time figuring out what you like to do, how you like to spend your time. Like, if you've just moved out of your parents' house, there's a lot of questions to answer of like, well, okay, I don't have chores anymore that are being mandated by my parents, so what am I going to do? Who am I going to hang out with? How often am I going to eat out? Like, you have to answer all these questions because they're happening to you. And I think that's where this idea of expressive individualism just kind of crops up organically, because the easiest answer is, well, what makes me happy? Okay, let's just do a lot of that until I crash, or until the tank runs out of gas or whatever. But I think that's why this conversation is even relevant, is because you have to answer those questions. But you don't have to look through this lens to find the answer to it. There's a different way. And I was even thinking, when you're talking about how we get to our celebration service every year, and every year there's always stories of people saying, I came to college, I wanted all of the beer, sex, girls, everything that I could handle as long as I could handle it. And then I realized I was more lonely and empty than when I started. And then I found Jesus. That story happens every year in most of our baptism stories. I was thinking to myself, like, we could just cut out that middle part, bro. You could skip the pain and the like. You could skip that bad part.
That's what I'm trying to do. Take my word for it. You can skip all that bad part.
And look, all the stories. Had to go through that. All the testimonies are on YouTube, bro. Like, you can go watch them. Like, you can
come talk to me.
Yeah, and those people are sitting in the room still.
That's right. We have all been there.
Yeah, but I was also thinking, like, so you have to answer all those questions. And you are discovering your adult personhood, like, live before our eyes in college. And at some point you have to hit the realization that, like, you can't just change for the rest. I mean, you are going to change and be sanctified for the rest of your life, but I will still have to be Jared Deatherage when I'm dead. Like, and so there will have to be fixed things about me that are never going to change.
Yeah.
And so the hard thing is when you encounter Jesus and you say, my whole life has changed, you have to have the perspective of like, okay, now I have to, this part of me has to exist and get better for the next 60 years. Like I have to be a Christian, and I'm like, I can't just dip. I've got to be a Christian for the rest of my life. And I can't just hop around like from job to job.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like that. I have to figure out how to do this for the long game. So I think that's part of the pain too, is like, well, if I just figure out whatever makes me happiest, I could just keep bouncing around and I'll always be happy.
Yeah. I think you guys were right when you put your finger on commitment. Like that might be the defining, that's the doorway out of expressive individualism. Or that's how you fight it, is you commit to things that are not perfect for the long haul.
Yeah.
And you don't, like, when you start to not like it, you should say to God, thank you for making me not like it, because now I have to be sanctified.
Yeah.
Now you get to work in my life. If I just loved it all the time, then there's never going to be any sanctification happening. But you commit to a woman for life. You commit to a church for a long time. You commit to a city. You commit to a job. And you just say, my enjoyment of this thing is not going to be the determining factor in my commitment level. That's not who I'm going to be.
I think of like most of these people, like Rousseau you mentioned, or a lot of these other, Sigmund Freud, or I don't know all of their stories, but it seems like oftentimes when you these people who have shaped thought over years, you listen to what they've wrote on this stuff, but then you peer into their personal life.
Right.
And they've been divorced 4 times,
Yeah,
can't like been single, have a ton of kids, or
70
don't talk to
illegitimate
them.
children.
Yeah, and it's just like, you have been trying to be 18 for 70 years, right? You've been the rebellious 18-year-old who moved out of your parents' house, and now have just, the world said, justify your behaviors, and you thought long enough to justify some pretty inappropriate behavior. I think that's most of the people.
Yeah.
Philosophers as a class are usually they're the least qualified to tell you how to think in general.
Yeah, and I even think like the qualifications for the question of like, is this a good decision? Well, that's a really hard question to answer if your frame to work through that question is, does it make me happy?
Right.
Well, okay, how happy and for how long?
Yeah.
But if your life is centered around Christ, like the question you should be asking is this glorifying?
Yeah.
And that can be answered, you know, that's what community is for. You can work through that with your huddle or your village or whatever, whoever is around you, and you can work through that answer. And if the answer is yes, then it doesn't matter how I feel or how long it's going to take. That's, I think, because I was thinking through like, okay, well, how can you tell, even if you commit to something, how do you tell, well, should I be doing this, or is this actually worth it? But if you've already answered the question of, is this glorifying? And the answer is, well, if the answer is no, then you just don't do that thing.
Right.
Yeah. So, but if the answer is yes, then you can firmly plant your feet.
Right.
And that's how you can remind yourself, even when things are horrendous and suck, you can say, well, like, this has got to be worth it, because at some point I figured out that it was glorifying. So I don't have to work through that whole frame of logic again. I've already answered that question.
Yeah.
And nothing's changed on the glorifying front. God has not changed, obviously. I'm the one changing, or the things around me are changing. So if I need to pivot or whatever, that's fine. If I now need to go to village with 3 kids in my arms, then that's what I'm going to do.
Right.
But God is still God, and he is still glorified through the worship of his people and people coming to know him. So I just need to figure out how I can worship now that my life has changed, you know?
And, yeah, man. And being caught up in the culture that is what makes me happy, what a breath of fresh air, right? It is to recognize, and you were getting at this in your sermon, recognize that it is Christ and his work that is the center, right? And that's clear. That's black and white. We know what is glorifying to God. We can look that up. We can talk to people around us. We don't have to guess, is this thing going to make me happy? And do I try it out for 6 months and then it sucks and I have to switch to something else, right? Like, we have this guiding principle, which is, I think, what a lot of us, when you say about these stories coming to Christ, and that's what a joy. Maybe it takes some time to recognize that your happiness not being the center of your life is actually so
such a breath of fresh air.
Meaningfulness makes a far better aim than happiness. And for the Christian, the most meaningful thing is glorifying God.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, Jerry. Yeah, our happiness is just it's fickle and weak and unstable.
Yeah.
So, yeah, some other examples. We were talking about examples of expressive individualism. Some other things that I was thinking about. So there's a lot of these are individual, but then I was thinking of some corporate expressive individualism things. So like in the last, 10 or 15 years, there's been a broad rejection of historical figures, prominent historical figures. Like tear down all the statues, rename all the road names, get the faces off the dollar bills, that kind of a movement. And that's a prime example of rejecting our heritage, rejecting our ancestors, rejecting the traditions. Yeah. We don't actually understand them. We don't know what was going on in that time, but we just say everyone before me was an idiot. They were a bigot and they were primitive and they didn't know all that I know, and so we have to get rid of them. And we just paint the past with a red brush without really knowing anything about it. So that's one example of, I think, a broad societal expression. Another one that I thought of in the church world is the rise of non-denominationalism, which didn't exist 50 years ago. There were no non-denominational churches because a church fundamentally was an alignment to something bigger than yourself. And now in the last 50 years, 20, 30 years maybe especially, there's been this explosion of churches that say we're not formally part of anything except for we're just Jesus people. We're just the church. We're like the original disciple. Everybody thinks they're just like the original disciples. So they don't want to say I'm a Presbyterian or I'm a Baptist, or they don't want to align themselves with any historic group, with any institution before them, and instead just want to say I'm my own thing. I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to go my own way. That's huge in our world today. Even though they're I know a lot of non-denominational churches. I know them well, inside and out. They're just Baptist churches.
Yeah, I was going to say. It's like
they're just afraid of the word Baptist.
Yeah.
That's all that it is.
They do subscribe to confessions.
Right.
If you were to read one of them to them, they would say, oh yeah, we totally believe that. It's like, okay, so you're a Baptist.
Right. They just don't like the title of the confession, the Baptist. We don't like that.
Yeah.
Because they're afraid of...
Because some of our members drink alcohol and dance on the weekend or something. I don't know.
Right. Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a couple examples of
some
corporate stuff. I was thinking about one more. This one's a little bit more touchy, so I'd love to get your guys' take on it. You can push back if you disagree, or lean in if you really agree. This is for our owners, so please talk. I think the most blatant expression of expressive individualism, and the one that actually went too far, so far that we're seeing the swing back toward at least spiritual interest on our campus, openness to these kind of institutions, is the gender nonsense. I think that's the prime example of this whole concept, that my reality is determined by my internal feelings, who I feel that I am, and then I have to force everything to conform to my inner feelings. So I'm going to mutilate my body to conform. I'm going to make everybody else use my preferred pronouns to conform. I'm going to make the world see me as whatever I identify as on the inside. There couldn't be a clearer... It's like expressive individualism run to its maximum extent. And I think it was so insane that everybody saw it. I think people started to wake up I think this was the issue that is making people wake up. Yeah. And I think it's the reason we're seeing a swing happen on campus. There's a political swing happening. That Gen Z is swinging way to the right compared to their millennial foreparents. Yeah. And then there's also a spiritual swing happening that we've talked about all week on campus. Yeah. So tell me if you think I'm wrong, or tell me if you think I'm right. What do you see there?
It seems like maybe one of the markers of expressive individualism is there's typically not an opt-in to learning more about somebody. It is very much, because typically in a normal relationship with somebody that you don't know, there's some effort required to get to know where they're from and what they're into or what their thing is, what's your name, where are you from, what's your major, like that's the three bing bang boom questions about talking to a freshman. But anytime there is like you're walking towards me and I already tell, you don't have to open your mouth, you don't have to get more than 10 feet from me, I know who you are and what your thing is. And I think what you're saying is like that is that, like I already know what you would like to tell me.
Well, that's good.
Cue in the I'm into CrossFit, I'm vegan, whatever, insert this here. And some of those things there's nothing wrong with, but you can do CrossFit and that's totally fine. I'm just saying there's a certain type of person that's just like that. They're already approaching, they look a certain way, they're wearing the gear, they're going to talk to you about it.
The embodiment of their identity is this idol, right?
And same.
And you're saying the gender thing is the predominant example.
Yes, because as you're walking towards me, I can tell exactly if I start a conversation, it's going to be the center of it. Whether I want it to or not, whether I want to know or not. There's no opting. There's no opting.
Middle ground.
Into it or out of it. I'm just confronted with it, and I have to do something about it.
Yeah. Well, I think if you go to a CrossFit gym, everyone walking out of there is not throwing that in your face. And I will say this, back to what we perceived with this movement in the last 4 years is I don't know how much I'm allowed to say. My uncle has been gay my whole life, and he was up here recently visiting this last week, and interacting with him is great. Like, it is not in your face, right? It is not this, and this traditional movement of homosexuality is something. I'm not an expert of what happened in the 90s, but as I've had a couple of conversations, it's like this equal rights movement of homosexual marriage. It wasn't this thrown in your face movement. It wasn't like, I want to marry a man, so you have to believe everything I say.
Right.
Where what we've seen in the last 4 to 6 years is, if you don't affirm my gender, you're every word in the book, and
you're erasing me. You're committing violence against me.
It's this wake up of our culture in the last I can't put a time frame, 2 years, where we're recognizing that is too much, right? And because in today's LGBTQ cult or community, whatever you want to call it, you have to throw everything you got on your person and at the people around you. There's no middle ground homosexuality anymore. There's no, this is just who I am, it's okay, I have this whole other identity. I'm a whole person. We've lost the idea of our personhood is holistic. And I was talking to some people on campus this week who were this person we're talking about, right? Tattooed, every square inch tattooed of cats or whatever they appreciated, whatever they loved, right? And I didn't push us into this conversation. I was with someone who got us into this conversation really quickly, and I was shaking my head. I was like, oh man, here we are, back on campus. And to have a good conversation, I think you have to be somewhat tactful in how you approach it. But I just kept coming back at her and saying, hey, the one thing I want you to get away from this conversation, because she was pushing, is my lesbianism a sin? Just say yes. Tell me yes, it is, right? Affirm the thing I already know about you to be true. I just, out of everything, I just wanted her to know, hey, your personhood is way more than your sexuality. And we've lost sight of that. Expressive individualism has lost sight of whatever thing is deepest in you, which for most of us is, I think, our sexuality. I think our sexuality is made by God to be, we know it is made by God to be this core tenet of our personhood. And so I think in this movement, it is tied so closely. It's so heavy and burdensome on the people who are struggling with this, because it is tied so deep to our soul and how God has made us. But the thing that I was pleading with this gal on campus was, you're so much more than this. Like,
Yeah.
you are a whole person, and you doubling down on this, focusing on this thing that you think is going to fill the God-sized hole in your heart is actually just driving you further away
Right.
from how God's designed you.
They've made it their use of the term identity is not unintentional.
Yeah.
It is who they are.
Yeah.
And so if you don't affirm all of it, and I think there's a differentiation worth being made. Maybe you could say between the LGB and the T. Maybe that's where the line goes. I think it actually belongs more like pre-2010 LGB and then post-2010 LGBT. There's a comedian, I can't remember who it was, but he has a whole bit about how the old gays and the trans don't get along.
That's probably
at all.
where I got that.
It
got
might
that
be.
thought.
Dave
Yeah.
Chappelle thing.
It might
Yes,
be Dave Chappelle
yeah.
thing, but there's something real there because the Stonewall
Totally.
gays, the old gays,
Yeah.
they were, obviously we know what we believe about all that stuff,
Yeah.
but they were trying to express themselves privately, just without breaking the law.
Yeah.
Where today the LGBT movement, particularly the T, is trying to enforce their identity on the whole world. Everybody else has to
Yeah.
conform to my self-perception.
Yeah, and it has its heads rooted in the early stuff, right? Obviously, we
Yeah.
all
Right.
recognize that there's nothing good was happening then
Right.
too, but something.
The train got off the rails.
Yes,
then,
and this is
then
what
this
we're
is where
seeing.
it goes
Yes.
once it's off the rails.
Yeah, exactly, we're seeing. I had a student walk up to me. A student walk up to me this week. He said, "Y'all are Christian, right?" I said, "Of course." He knew we were part of the church. It was me and another staff member, and he said, "How do you guys do it out here?" And I was like, "Yeah, he's from northern Idaho." And it didn't really get into it. We didn't have a whole lot of time to talk about. But then I got coffee with him later. I was like, "Hey, you said something the other day. I need to follow up with what you see on campus that you're like shocked by." And he is like, "It's the gender affirming. Like I've had every day they've taught me how to use people's pronouns. We had to go around in a circle and share our pronouns. And I was he said, it's a group about, they split in their orientation groups, probably 15 to 25. And he said out of his group, he was one of two people who denied, said, I will not answer that question. Like, I will not tell you my pronouns. Out of everyone else played the game. And so, but the two this year is 200% more than probably last year. Right?
Yeah.
Like, the two people who said, I'm actually not going to play the game. Right? Like, so that was what he was referencing. And he could have said a half dozen things that I think are crazy about our campus, but so for you to say, hey, this is maybe the thing that is pushed the line, and to reflect on the conversation I had with him this week is, I think you're onto it, right? I think for him coming out where he came out of, that's everyone probably in his circle thinks that thing is crazy, and now he's here and he's like, you guys are all crazy. Why are we doing this?
So it may still be 2 out of 25 that are willing to, on freshman orientation day, have the guts to say it, which that's a big step to be able to say that.
Yeah.
But, so I say this from getting to know the freshmen the last year or two, and then mostly from being a high school wrestling coach for the last 10 years. It's different and they don't buy it. Now, I don't know what they're going to say when they get in their orientation groups. They'll probably just toe the line and stay out of trouble. But they see what we're seeing, and they think it's what it is. They're not going to play the game. They think it's all ludicrous and silly. And that's what's coming for the university is these young people, particularly young men, who saw the chaos caused by this over realized expressive individualism. And they're not doing it anymore. They're just like, you pushed it too far.
Well,
we're done.
My brother, to add to this, has been a public school system in Missoula, Montana for my whole life, and he's a sophomore in high school now. And so since he was in second grade, students have been waving trans flags, wearing trans flags to school, being encouraged. And we're not talking a small percentage of his class. Through elementary school and middle school, I think it went down from what it was when I was hearing about his second grade class.
Yeah.
It's saying a fourth of the kids are wearing some sort of LGBTQ flag.
Right.
That in second grade, I was bewildered, right?
Yeah.
And so what was that in second grade has dwindled now to probably numbers that are much lower percentages now, like probably in the 5 to 10% in his high school. But to think like...
Yeah, something peaked in the 2018 range.
Yeah.
Something in there was like, we hit the breaking point.
Yeah. Yeah, and well, to think of now him going off to... And he has Christian values, raised in a house that has Christian values.
Mm-hmm.
But like to think about his group going into college in the next 3-4 years of... They know this is all wild. Right? Like they don't need to...
Right.
Not unlike where when we were in college, we were all just figuring it out. Like, what are we experiencing?
And if you came to the conviction that it's wild, you're like, I better stay quiet or else I'll never be hired and I'll never find a wife and I'll never...
Yeah. Well, and even like thinking about what you said earlier is like, okay, your sexual identity actually is way down at the base. Like it's not a conversation you can start off by just dismissing the issue and saying, well, actually that's not that important.
Right. Yeah.
Because even personally, like, okay, if I'm not a straight man, like a lot of things downstream in my life are changed.
Oh yeah.
Right.
So like it is a very base issue, but even more base to your humanity is, are you alive or dead? And if you are without Christ, you're dead. It doesn't matter if you're straight or gay or a man or a woman or like you feel like you're somewhere in between or whatever. It's like, brother, you're not even alive. Like this is a non-starting issue. So even the thing that you think is most important to tell the entire world about, it like it's not even a drop in the bucket, dude. Like you're a skeleton.
Yeah,
so I think that's where because I often think like, how would I even approach that issue? And my temptation is to flee by saying, oh yeah, like it's actually like your lesbianism is not that important because your sexuality is just whatever. Well, it's not whatever, but like I said, even more important is your state. Are you alive or are you dead?
Yeah,
that's good.
And that's an easy question to answer.
Yeah. Well, I think you're 100% right there, but I also, again, think it's worth differentiating between your sexuality, meaning who you're attracted to, and your gender, your sex. I think your sex is much more base level than your sexuality.
Yeah.
And so the LGBT stuff, or the LGB stuff, messes with your sexuality, which is deep and serious.
Yeah.
The T gets into a level that we hadn't ever seen before. You're messing with fundamental building blocks of reality, which I think was part of why that's the movement that's the straw that broke the camel's back.
Right.
Once you open that door, chaos is unleashed on everything, and I think even the fifth graders saw it. They're like, that doesn't work. That's nuts. We're not doing that.
Yeah.
That's good. Okay, so we're talking about a theme that keeps coming up, and I keep bringing it up, is this rejection of tradition, rejection of historical figures, our ancestors, our families, our communities. Anything that came before us is stupid and foolish and stuff like that. Because I think that's pretty well at the core of this expressive individualism thing. I want to get away from everything that came before and assert myself as a new person. And so I wanted to, every time I talk about this topic, I think of this quote from G.K. Chesterton, and I wanted to read it here. So this is a couple paragraphs. This will be a minute. It's not a super short quote, but I think it's phenomenal. I think he hits some stuff on the head. So Chesterton was a Catholic theologian, author. He's wonderful. This was an essay called The Fence. So 1929, he wrote this. He said, "There exists in such a case a certain institution or law, let us say, for the sake of simplicity, a fence or a gate erected across a road." So he's given an illustration. There's a fence across a road. He says, "The more modern type of reformer goes gaily up to it and says, 'I don't see the use of this. Let's clear it away.' To which the more intelligent type of reformer will do well to answer, 'If you don't see the use of it, I certainly won't let you clear it away. Go away and think. Then, when you can come back and tell me that you do see the use of it, I may allow you to destroy it.'" This paradox rests on the most elementary common sense. The gate or fence did not grow there. It was not set up by sleepwalkers who built it in their sleep.
It's highly improbable that it was put there by escaped lunatics who were there for some reason let loose in the street. Some person had some reason for thinking it would be a good thing for somebody. And until we know what that reason was, we really cannot judge whether the reason was reasonable. It's extremely probable that we have overlooked some whole aspect of the question. If something set up by human beings like ourselves seems to be entirely meaningless and mysterious, if something seems entirely meaningless and mysterious, there are reformers who get over this difficulty by assuming that all their fathers were fools. I think that's largely what's happening in the expressive individualism system. He says, but if that is so, we can only say that folly appears to be a hereditary disease. But the truth is that nobody has any business to destroy a social institution until he has really seen it as a historical institution. If he knows how it arose and what purposes it was supposed to serve, he may really be able to say that they were bad purposes, but that they have since become bad purposes, or that they are purposes which are no longer served. But if he simply stares at the thing as a senseless monstrosity that has somehow sprung up in his path, it is he, and not the traditionalist, who is suffering from an illusion. So, essentially, that whole quote is laying out this idea. You run into a fence, there's a certain type of person who says, let's just get rid of it. They don't know why the fence is there, they don't know why it was erected in the first place. And that type of reformer is a fool. That's the foolishness of the expressive individualism thing. Yeah. We're going to get rid of all traditions, get rid of all of the things that came before us, even though we have no idea what they were for. Yeah. We don't know why this tradition existed. We don't know why our parents did it this way. We just know we don't want to do it that way. And Chesterton says, until you know what the fence was for, you have no right tearing it down. Yeah. So this is called Chesterton's fence. That's the illustration that's commonly used. In short version, you have no right tearing down a fence until you know what it's for. And I get the sense, as I look around it, I mean, a lot of these examples that we just talked about of expressive individualism, the people expressing their individualism in these ways have no clue why the old tradition existed. That they have no reference for what problem that used to solve. I heard somebody one time say that traditions are just solutions to problems that don't exist anymore.
Yeah, it's like there's like a meme that's like, we have a society-wide problem, we come up with a solution, we make it a tradition so we don't forget, and then we think our ancestors are fools, so we throw it out. Now we have a society-wide problem. It's like all free.
So I think a ton of what we're seeing in the chaos of our world today is we've gotten rid of all the traditions of our parents because we're fools, and now the problems are coming back that those traditions used to solve for. Yeah. And now we're wondering, why are all these problems showing back up? So as I read that illustration, do you have any thoughts? Anything come to mind? Any ways you see us trying to get rid of the fence without understanding it?
Some of it's hard too, because like the world that we live in really is way different than even like our parents. Like I always pictured when I was a kid, like, okay, if I have any problems with my kids or I can't figure something out, I'm just going to call my parents, because obviously they raised kids, and I think they did a great job because I'm okay, you know. But and that works for most things. But so I was born in '97, and the world in which my parents raise kids and the world in which I'm raising kids are largely two completely different planets. And so there is a lot of instances where I'm like, not that, like I never see a situation and think to myself, oh yeah, my parents were definitely fools for that. But there is a lot of things where I'm like, okay, well, I probably am going to have to do this different than my parents or my grandparents or whoever, because that thing does not exist for me anymore. Or
it didn't exist for you, and now it does. You were 10 when the iPhone came out.
Right.
Your daughter was not born yet.
She could have one today if she wanted one.
Exactly.
You know, like
she has access to yours.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of things that either just weren't, like you were saying, weren't problems for my parents, that are now currently problems, or just like even more so, there's solutions now to problems that vexed my parents that would be so easy. Like I was a very energetic kid. My parents didn't have an iPad to just sit me in front of, you know, but I do. And so in my head, I'm like, okay, my parents were just fools. They were doing it the hard way. Well, no, maybe there's merit in not doing it that way.
Yeah.
And so I think those are the things that are a little less obvious and a little less flagrant maybe than Chesterton's fence, but are still the same thing. Like
Right.
we're staring down things that, okay, yeah, there's a fence there. We weren't raised with electronics. Maybe some of that was actually intentional.
Right.
Like we were raised in this century still, you know, like,
Yeah.
so
Well,
that's what I think of.
There's new roads, but there's fences that are similar, right? And so contextualizing it can be really helpful.
Right.
Is what I think of when you say that, right? Like we can take tradition and use tradition to learn for what's going forward, take principles out of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just thinking of some of the examples we talked about. So like the non-denominationalism. That's great. It feels good to be able to tell somebody we're just Jesus people. We're just followers of Jesus. But you forget that the reason denominations came to exist was because of the value of partnerships and creeds and confessions and alignment and broader accountability. Like those are all really good and valuable things. And when you get rid of denominationalism, you don't have those things anymore.
Yeah.
You get to, your non-denominational church might be great. It might go way off the rails, and you have there's nothing protecting your people anymore. There's nothing. There's no partnerships that you're aligned around. So that's just one example of how we get rid of this thing because it's a little bit uncomfortable or it's outdated or something like that, and we lose track of all the blessings that thing came with.
Yeah. And even like at a micro level, like we've had conversations around ownership of our church. Like why do we have owners? Why do we have members? Why aren't we just, like you said, Jesus people who meet on Sundays and go to Village or whatever?
Right.
But there's something of value in saying, yes, we are all individuals and we are all unique. And even the expression, like the biblical expression of like we are the different parts of the body, that is true. Like we are all different, unique individuals. But we have like transactionally, we have decided to forego some of that freedom to commit to this thing, to say we are all not just Christians, big C Christians, a part of the big C church,
Right.
but we are specifically aligned, like I said earlier, to this place, to these people, to this mission. And there's some unity there that is totally worth selling, sacrificing, foregoing some of my expression or some of my uniqueness or whatever, so that I can serve and be served and appreciate a reciprocal relationship with people who are on mission. So there's some of that too, even like at the micro level, not even our church, congregating with other churches, but even just the members of our church.
Yeah, that's good. What would you guys say are some of the dangers of expressive individualism? Or maybe where do you, in your world, your orbit, what are some of the main dangers that you see taking a toll on people?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about this in the context of Chesterton's fence situation. Is one of the there's some underlying assumptions that are made, I think, in here, and you can say this is one maybe, is that the lack of thought needed to make big decisions, and I think that is, like you're asking, a danger of expressive individualism is that you are at the whim of your pleasure, right? Like there is no need for you to think deeply about decisions that matter, right? If it feels good on Tuesday, I'm going to do it until it doesn't work on Friday, and then I'm going to do something different on Friday. And that is terrible for a society. It needs to function and have good leadership that is steady and steadfast, and maybe we can even maybe see some of that in our leadership in our country right now, right? You could say there is some at the whim of your pleasure to insult someone or do something for the rise of something. We see that all over media right now, whether it's comedians or headlines, right? There's this pull to market the thing that's most clickbaity, and oftentimes that is something that doesn't take deep thoughts. It doesn't take time to marinate and and that is an issue, and it is a prevalent issue in our, and it's shaping so much thought, right? It's shaping so many people's thought of how they make their own decisions. Like if you're seeing this happen repetitively in culture, and you haven't had someone mentor you into good thought, how to think well and deeply about something, whether it's worth
how
having
to think
this.
contrary to your pleasures.
Yeah,
That's the hard. It's easy to think in line with your pleasures.
You don't have to. We're wired that way.
Right.
So I think that is once you start seeing this, right, you see it everywhere.
And the Christian temptation is, if you want to act on your desires, and you don't want to put thought into it, you just slap the "God is leading us" label on it. You just say God is telling us we've been praying, and here's what God is, and then what that does is it makes that decision untouchable. Now your Christian community can't challenge any of it because now it's God who's saying all this.
Well, or if they do try, how dare they? And
right.
It gives
now
you
it's
more
spiritual
ammo.
abuse, or now it's cultish.
It gives you more
exactly.
more backlash of how dare you question.
Right. So that's the Christian way out of that conundrum. You don't have to think deeply because you can just play the spiritual trump card, and then you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Nobody can bug you.
Yeah. It seems also like the more consumed you are by expressing yourself, the more caught up you are in trying to pick up other people's expressions, and it totally rewires the way that you start looking at people. Like kind of in the same vein as like how porn rewires your brain to see people as objects to be used, just sex objects. It starts to rewire your brain to see people as objects of their own expression, or objects of their own interests. And like you were saying earlier with the whole gender idea, is like you're more than just the sum of what you like to do on the weekends. Like you are, God has created you intricately as a whole person, and the only way you can start to see people through that lens is by being changed by the Spirit to see people as God sees them, to be created by Him. And I think that's one of the byproducts of like our Instagram culture, is we're just the sum of seeing what people are trying to display to us, and not necessarily who they are, what they've been created for. And I think that's what God desires for us. And I think that's the shame of what that's the byproduct of what we've started to do in ourselves, that kind of spills over into like, okay, well, I'm trying to curate this thing so people will see it, but that means he's doing the same thing, so I should, like, what is he showing me that I don't know, And I think this whole examination of, as I've been thinking through it for myself, of like, what am I guilty of here? Like, this is a exercise best performed on yourself, because as soon as you start thinking of like, oh, well, like, yeah, Preston totally does this in the clothes he wears or whatever, like, what an idiot, it's like, well, that starts to poison the well, and then you just start seeing it everywhere, and you can't help but just assume like, oh, Preston's wearing a Send Network t-shirt because he just wants to show me how holy he is and how committed he is to our church. Or it's like, no, dude, it's just free merch. Like, your boy just doesn't like to spend money.
I only have 4 shirts.
Yeah, he just doesn't like to spend money on
sometimes.
t-shirts, dude. Like, So I think like you really lose filling the gap with trust if you start thinking of this as like, you start examining what you see around you. But if you just start at home and say like, okay, where am I doing this, and why am I doing it that way? I think the easiest way is to just start with your social media feed. Like, every time you go to post something, you say like, why am I posting this, and who is this for? Because you can use Facebook and Instagram well. Like, there are tools to be used. It's very difficult, but I think if you're asking that question every time, why am I sharing this, and who is it for? If you can come up with a good answer, click that post button. But it's, like I was saying, I think it's really hard to come up with a good answer for that you feel good about at the end of the day. So,
or it's hard to mature out of a thought. The reason why you posted it in high school, right?
Yes.
Like we all know that.
Yeah.
Like, whatever, we wanted everyone to see this thing. I think it's really hard to mature out of that, right? Like, I think that
it gets a lot more polished, but it's still the same motivation. Like it's certainly not as obvious as when you look back on your feed from 10 years ago and you're like, oh, yo, that needs to be deleted.
Right. Yeah, there are a lot of dangers that I was thinking of as I was writing the sermon and doing research. I think it weakens our institutions. The family is weakened, which we see all around us, right?
Yeah.
Families are doing very poorly.
Yeah.
Rates of parentless or fatherless households are high. Divorce is super high. Abortion is super high. Those are all weakened family institutions.
Yeah.
Churches are weakened. Church attendance has been plummeting for 50 plus years in America. I think there's a mental health strain on all this. If you're constantly thinking through the lens of how do I express myself most authentically, that's a lot of mental work to do constantly, where it's a lot easier for you to just not think that way. And I don't think we're built to think that way. And so it creates anxiety and stress and a mental load that we're not meant to carry.
Well, it probably has like an unintentional inverse effect too, because the more you're thinking about presenting yourself to others, the more you have to think about how people are receiving that presentation.
Yeah.
Like the more self-conscious you start to get.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're really like you start out trying to boost yourself and build your ego, and where you end is very self-conscious.
Right.
And like we were saying earlier, the more you build towards the pinnacle of uniqueness, inherently the more isolated and lonely you have to be, because you will be alone, set apart from your peers. And like that's a place that sounds attractive, but I think once you're there, I don't think that's a very fun place to be.
Right.
No.
Just completely different and alone from everybody else.
Yeah, unique is synonymous with alone.
Yeah. Well, and I think the thing I'm circulating around in my mind here too is we haven't explicitly said this is just outside the church, but I think that like it is truly still inside the church as we are being sanctified as a group of young people growing in our maturity. Because I imagine if I was 70 years old and I was walking into a service, I'd be like, I don't care. I don't give a rip. But we are uniquely in a season, I think, with young families and college students where most of us were raised in this culture. We were inundated, just like we all had an iPhone in our hands. We were all raised by millennials, right, who were or on that threshold of millennial, right, like this or the generation right before. But like where this idea really started to form, we were all swimming in this. And so I think that uniquely to our church, the sanctification that has to happen in the midst of all of our hearts as we look to each other owner nights and we walk into church, whether it's a new car, a new house, or coffee gadget, or whatever it is in the consumer world, or whether it's in the way you parent or the way you send your kids to school. Like I think all that stuff starts to hit so deeply in our church because this is the water we swim in.
Yeah.
And we aren't saved out of this. Like God saves you from a place to send you back into it, right? A little bit of that is a reality here, is that as God continues to sanctify us as a church, I think that we will be a beacon or a tower for our city around us of people who are not anxious, not riddled by mental illness, and are a place of safety for our city. Like if God continues to sanctify in our church in this way, because this is certainly an issue in churches across the city or across the nation, right? Like because we are swimming in this, it's you get saved and we haven't fixed this yet. And I think that this expressive individualism sees its way out in that social fragmentation, right? Where I loved when you had mentioned that, because I think this is the water we're swimming in,
right.
You know?
Yeah, everything about our world it's atomized. We've broken it down to the individual level instead of seeing the world as a collection of institutions, right?
Yeah.
The basic building block of society is the family, the household, and then you build that into churches, and then you build that into nations. Instead, we've broken it down all the way to the individual, and I don't think that's God's design.
Yeah.
I don't think we're made for it, and it doesn't help society flourish, as is obvious by looking around.
And I go back to like consumerism is such a great representation of this thing. It's not this thing in its entirety, but it does a really good job, I think, of, in our context, pushing like helping us identify where are the yellow flags,
Yeah.
right? Where are the flags where are the beige flags? The things that are maybe not a red flag
Talking
yet.
about Gen Z freaking language.
Yeah, I
bro,
got you
come on.
guys. But like, where are those things that like this isn't bad yet, but if I see that person buy this thing, I want that thing, or like this, or man, I need to consume in a certain way. I think that is really should be able to put some warning lights in our head when we start seeing that stuff of why am I doing that? Because maybe not all of us are posting all the time or whatever it is, right? Like there's some other maybe warning flags in our lives as we seek to be sanctified that can like help us navigate these things that are rooted deeper in us. And consumerism is one I keep going
Well,
back
it even like takes hold of the steering wheel in ways that you don't want to be. Like I like the realest example I could think of like this week, even talking to your spouse when you're in the trenches of parenting and you have like these tiredness competitions, like where you get home and you're like, I'm so tired because I worked this hard. I took this many steps today. I worked a 12-hour day or whatever. Yeah. And then, Maggie will say, well, the kids took different naps and I had to get this work done. So like, I'm trying to one up her in how tired I am so that I can have a break. And I'm like, I don't even want to be tired. Yeah. I don't want to be like that. Yeah. And so you're trying, and I think we even do this like amongst parents where it's like, oh yeah, my kids aren't sleeping and like I'm so tired and I'm run ragged and or my kid's being so disobedient. It's like you don't want to be a tired ragged parent. Like you want to, like that's not the ideal. But we're trying to express ourselves as like the hardest worker or the most strung out or whatever. And when I'm like, why are we even doing that, dude? Like, you don't want to be like that. But I think that's that pursuit towards uniqueness where I'm like, it's like, yeah, we're all parents, but I'm a set apart parent. It's like, no, I'm not, dude. We all have kids that don't sleep very well. We all have kids, we're all fighting right now. And that's fine. Like, I don't have to be set apart. It's more beautiful if I'm the same as all these parents and we're all doing the same thing together. That's way better than me being the most tired parent. So I don't know. It almost seems to get like irrational in my mind sometimes where I'm like, I don't want to be like that.
I think one of the other big danger that stands out to me, maybe I'm just thinking of this because of a conversation I had on campus this week, but the erosion of objective morality. It's like, where do you find your moral standards? So for the Christian, we would say morality is defined by God. We serve a righteous God. God has laid down his moral law to all of us in Scripture and written in our hearts. And so that's what true morality is. Whether you like it or not, wherever you live, it doesn't matter. We're bound to the same moral law. But if you reject that institution, if you reject God, you reject Scripture, you reject the church, if you believe that morality is something that is generated inside you based on your desires and feelings at the moment, then there's no... that works as long as you never have to interact with another human. But as soon as you have to interact with anybody else, you now have one subjective set of moral values and another subjective set of moral values clashing, and they probably don't match each other. And so now you have people who are they're not just doing things. Well, maybe I should just say, now you have two people who are doing the equivalent of sin against each other. Right? They are breaking the other person's moral laws, and there's no arbiter to say who's right or who's wrong. Like, it's just both of them get to lay this truth claim on it. And so we now multiply that times 7 billion people in the world, 350 million people in America, and when we all think of morality that way, or even think on our campus, 10,000 students who think of morality that way, now you have 10,000 unique subjective moral systems clashing into one another, and it's no wonder
everyone's confused.
Society's on the fringe
and hurt and dysfunctional, and there's tons of division.
You can't have a conversation.
Yeah, you can't get along. It's no wonder that society's in the chaos that it's in. So this kid at swing dancing, Oscar was talking to him, and then evidently their conversation reached a point where Oscar wanted to bring me into it. So he introduced me to this kid. He was very smart, very nice young man. I don't remember his name, but that was his issue. He's not a Christian, and he said,
I don't think that you need God in order to have a set of moral values. So he went on kind of the classic atheist morality argument that morality was developed as we as a society learned to live together. Yeah. And I said, that's fine, but you have to recognize that is not objective. That is subjective to the person and the society. What if two societies disagree on their moral values, and now they have to interact? What's going to happen? Oh, they go to war, most likely. Like, they're not going to get along here. And so without God as our creator, without God as the lawgiver, there can be no agreement on moral standards. And therefore, there can be no peaceable existence. Yeah. There can be no society that gets along the right way.
Yeah. Well, not to mention, the Lord will supply us with an unending supply of 18-year-olds that want to be the guy that's figured it out. Right. After all this time, all you fools for thousands of years been thinking about it, and I'm the guy in Missoula, Montana. I figured it out. 19 years old.
Right.
Bow down. The Lord will be generous with his supply of those young men.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
including probably the three of us.
Sure.
Speaking from experience.
Yeah. I just think of, I just had this visualization where you're describing that, and it's like, how small is that center point of the Venn diagram of everyone's subjective morality?
Right.
Right? Like, that is...
What can we all agree upon?
Yeah, that
not a lot.
That little hair in the middle of the Venn diagram, like, you're going to put your faith and hope in that thing. Right. Because it's just a faith system.
Yeah.
It's just a world view. And it's like, man, there's so much more. There's a life that's so much fuller.
Right.
When you come underneath the authority of a creator.
Right. Yeah, so this pivot us just a little bit to talk about our... I think one of the ways that you can see someone's expressive individualism is in the way that they talk about themselves, introduce themselves. Like as they're making their way into a social setting, who do they say that they are? So we're on campus all week, we're meeting new students, we're talking to them. I get the sense that the majority of the people that we talk to, when you ask them, who are you? That's the gist of the question that you're asking a lot of the time. What we hear on campus is, here's what I'm passionate about. Right? Here's what I identify as. Here's what my goals are as a person. Which, that all sounds fine. It's not like any red flags there. But everything about that answer is expressive individualism. Everything about it is, here's who I am. Here's how I'm trying to manifest myself in the world, express myself out in the world. Whereas I think, Jerry, if somebody were to ask you, Jared, who are you? I think you would say, I'm a Christian. I'm part of Resonate Church. I'm a husband to Maggie. I'm a father to my 3 kids. I'm a mechanic at Caterpillar. That's generally
that's about it. Yeah, that's the whole
what you'd say. Now, but notice the difference between those two introductions. Every single thing in your introduction is tying you to something outside you. Right? You're a Christian. You belong to Resonate. You're married to Maggie. You have these 3 kids. You work at Caterpillar. Every description is like, here's how I associate with this thing outside of me. Whereas the student that we're meeting on campus, every part of their description was something about inside of them. Yeah. Here's something about the inside of me. And so I think this is one of the clearest, maybe even definitions of expressive individualism, is just, where do you find your meaning? Where do you find your self-definition? Is it found inside yourself, or is it found outside yourself? And that, I think this is an example where it's not just the freshmen who struggle with this at all. I think this is rampant in every generation in our world today, or maybe up to millennials or something like that, where we don't want to find our identity in things outside of us because it's constraining, right? It feels restricting to say, my purpose in life is to be a husband.
Yeah.
My purpose in life is to be a father to my 3 kids. My purpose in life is to be an owner of Resonate Church. That feels really constricting. It's less constricting to say, my purpose in life is to explore my passion to be a creator, or something like that.
Or, like, not that impressive. Like
Right.
it feels like when you
oh,
give
you're a
that,
husband, good for you.
yeah. Oh, like you spend all day just like raising kids and
Right.
like, yeah, there's a lot of husbands and dads out there, bro. Like what's so great about you?
Right.
The correct answer is nothing, bro. Like
Right.
there's not that much special about me.
And
But
that's okay. That's
yeah,
the best
that's totally
answer.
fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if it was something else, you'd probably be doing a bad job
Yeah.
at those two things.
But I think so much of our aimlessness, our purposelessness, could be solved by people being willing to find their purpose in things outside of themselves. So instead of, going through this quarter life crisis or midlife crisis, where you just I don't know who I am, I don't know what my purpose is in the world, you just say, am I married? Then I'm a husband or a wife.
Yeah.
Do I have kids? Then I am a mother or father. Do I have a job? Then I am an employee at this company. Am I a member of a church? Then I'm like, when we find our purpose in things outside of us, it's constricting, but it's also, it's freeing or releasing in some way
Yeah.
because you have a definition now. There's boundaries on the playground of life, and you're not inventing yourself anew every day,
Yeah.
which is a lot of work.
Well, and like, I read an epitaph one time, like what's written on a headstone. It said, "Live, die, and be forgotten."
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is like, if you were to tell a college student, like, "Hey, this is what you should do in your life. You should live a full life, die, and then just be forgotten, just be folded into the history of time."
Yep.
I think that's like terrifying. Like that's for most people, that is the worst thing that could ever happen to
Right.
them. And there's a lot of times that I even wrestle with like, would I be cool if that's like my whole story? Like, here lies Jared Deatherage, these years to these years,
Yeah.
lived, died, and was forgotten. And I'm like, well, that's almost all of humanity. Like, almost everybody
Right.
who's ever lived that's their whole story.
Right.
Um,
Well,
and
think
s-
even in your family lineage, like
Yeah.
you know your grandparents' names. You probably know most of your great-grandparents' names.
maybe.
I bet you don't know very many great-great-grandparents.
Yeah.
So within 100 years, even your direct descendants will forget you.
Yeah.
That's true of almost everybody in the world.
Crazy.
And I think maybe this is too constraining, but I think if your answer is if you are not okay with that being your life story, there's probably quite a bit of expressive individualism in you,
Right.
where you want to be specifically remembered. And like, do I want my kids to remember me after I die? Yes, absolutely, I do.
Right.
But I think like that sort of statement spans, like, we're talking about history. Like, am I going to be recorded in a book? Is somebody going to read about me someday? And will I be okay if that's not the case? I think if your answer is no, there's probably some expressive individualism in you that's like, I need to make my mark. Like, I need to be set apart and for something. I mean, come on.
Right.
Well, as you're talking about the make your mark or make a difference in the world, I think that something that we've all bought is that it's I need to make my mark on the whole world, right?
Yeah.
Where it's actually no, I need to make my mark on my kids, my family, my church, my community. These things that are so much smaller,
Yeah.
like which 100 years ago everyone knew that because they didn't have the option.
Right.
Right.
But we've bought in the like I need to make my mark on the world.
Yeah.
And so you miss what matters for something that is an illusion.
Yeah, what if you thought my entire life goal is to make a difference to my kids and my church? And if I did that, I've accomplished everything. All my dreams are accomplished. Like, that's feasible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's realistic. It requires commitment and some legacy,
Yeah.
put down roots for decades, but
Yeah.
it's realistic.
But if your goal is recorded in a history book, that's like terrifying for most of your life. Because what happens when you get old and feeble? Your body's broke down. You got nothing left to contribute to anybody. You're just now a consumer, right? Like, you consume healthcare and you're just really needy.
Yeah.
And your life looked like everybody else's. Like, that's a tragedy if your end goal is I need to make my mark and I need to be recorded in the history books. But if you're like, if your goal is the people around me are closer to Christ than they would have been otherwise because of my efforts, dude, you could be comforted daily. You could be comforted this week. You know, like that's the kind of security where you're like, Christ will sweep me up when he wants, and I will be satisfied when it happens. And I think that's the antithesis to what we've been talking about, and the satisfaction that comes from changing your worldview to say, like, I don't need to be unique. God has uniquely set me apart already because of what he has done, not because of what I'm about to do or what I need to do in this lifetime.
Yeah.
My great grandma is still alive. She's 96, 97. She's here in Missoula, and she's living in kind of like a pre-hospice. She's not in medicated hospice yet, but we're getting ready. It could be any time. She's wanted to go for a long time. So her husband was a pastor. He was a traveling, kind of like a fill-in pastor for churches who needed a pastor for his whole career, and she went with him all over the country, served in tons of different churches, just a whole life of serving the church, giving her life to serve the church, and then growing a godly family. So her children are believers, her grandchildren are believers, her great-grandchildren are believers. I'm raising her great-great-grandchildren to be believers. And so she's going to die, and she will quickly be forgotten. As soon as her direct descendants die out, like as soon as I die, I'll be the last one in the family who remembers her. But she has left a lasting impact on the world. She's left a lasting legacy. She served in churches all over the country. She built a family that is continuing. My daughter Kaya's middle name is Marion, because that's my great-grandma's name. So she's passing on this legacy of godly faithfulness, and her name will never be remembered. She's not in the history books. And so you're right. If her goal her entire life was to make my mark and stand out, get my name in the books, then she failed. Her whole life was a radical failure. If her goal instead was to be a faithful wife and mother and a servant of the church, then her life was a wild success. And so there's just, our goals need to be set properly. But we have to resist that expressive individualism as we think about our legacies and our goals in life.
Yeah, you don't just move the goalposts once you encounter, like, oh, I just wanted to be a Fortune 500 CEO before. Okay, now I met Jesus, so I'm supposed to change. So now I just want to be the pastor of the biggest mega church I can find. It's like, no, you don't just like switch to a more Jesus-y goal. You know, like that's what it means to like be a new creation. It's like the old has passed away. I don't even want the same things anymore. I want, instead of being a billionaire who my kids' are going to be set up forever, I want to live, die, and be forgotten, and be swept up into comfort for eternity. That's what I want.
And I've had to wrestle with that a ton personally. Like I always had high aspirations and high dreams, and I think I have a lot of gifts and a lot of potential and some ability to do some things that on paper look really, the mega church pastor thing. And I've had lots of opportunities to do that. I get job offers a lot that pay a lot more, and it'd be pastoring a lot more people. Usually it's in a part of the country that I have no interest in moving to. But I've had to really work on my own soul and figure out, like, would I be okay if I spent my whole life pastoring 120 people in Missoula, Montana? Would that be a life well lived, or would I feel like a failure, like I didn't live up to my potential? And I've had to wrestle with that, and I think I'm still in some ways wrestling with that, but I've come to terms with it more and more every year. That this is a good work, and maybe this is the good work that God has for me.
Yeah. Well, maybe part of the tension is we should be expectant for God to do something, and aspiring for Him to work in our lifetime by our hands. To be like, would it be our honor for that to be the case? But also, maybe that's happening right now. Maybe this is the work that He has prepared for us. That's the hard part. You just don't know. But we'll probably always live in the expectation that that God should do something. We want Him to do more because He's capable.
It's good. All right, guys. Well, we've gone a long time.
Yes,
I want to end us on a fun note.
It's been all fun.
It's all been fun. Maybe this will be more fun. So I want to talk about this for a second and then see if you have any thoughts about it. I want to talk about Pixar because I think it's like you wouldn't think this, but I think Pixar actually gets this right a lot. I think they see. I don't know if they know why they see some things. I think Pixar has. There's a phenomenal book called Creativity Inc. It was written by one of the CEOs or creative directors of Pixar, and it talks about their story writing process, where he taps into some of this. Like, I think Pixar, almost against their will, has figured it out. They figured out how stories work.
Yeah.
And so they just keep writing stories that actually work, even though those stories betray the core values of the people who work at Pixar, or most likely work at Pixar. And so I want to give us 3 examples of how I think Pixar actually gets it. And then, you guys are dads, so maybe you watch some of these movies and you have some thoughts about these things.
I do.
So the first one is Inside Out. That's a fan favorite. Everybody loves Inside Out. So Riley, she's the main character. She's 11 years old. The movie's about her emotions. So she has joy and sadness and anger and fear and disgust, who live inside her mind. They have a little apartment in her mind and a big table that they run the show. And so in the story, she's moving from Minnesota to San Francisco, and it's not a good move for her. She has to give up hockey or something. Isn't that what it is?
Yeah,
She's got to give up hockey and her friends and all that
Yeah.
stuff. And so in her immaturity, I mean, she's 11, she's unstable, she's hostile to her parents, there's this big divide in the family because of her emotions. But then as the movie goes on, Riley learns how to organize and integrate all of those emotions in light of reality. So she conforms her emotions around the reality of moving to a new city and the reality of her parents being her parents, her authorities and her relational connections. She doesn't, cut off my toxic parents to express myself. She doesn't run away from, although doesn't she try to run away from home?
I think there's a moment in that.
Maybe she tries, but she doesn't do it. She doesn't run away from home. So she's conforming her inner emotional world to these external circumstances. Now, I think there's some things about the emotions that I'm not totally on board with, but I think for the most part, Inside Out gets it pretty right.
Yeah.
It shows those things. So I don't know if you guys are big Inside Out fans, but what do you think about that one?
Well, so Inside Out 2 is also out. So
I saw that.
So this is 2024.
I might be mixing the two movies.
No, so the fascinating thing, the reason I'm bringing it up is I just looked up. So Inside Out 2 came out in 2024, and a lot of things that you've observed in Inside Out 1 are still true. So Inside Out 1 is 2015, and so in this, they bookend a pretty crazy time in society, right? Where reality is more pushed as just escape reality, and we talk about this all night. But the same thing becomes true in Inside Out 2, where she has to figure out how she works in the world and how to organize her emotions to be able to engage reality as it is.
Right.
And there's a couple of moments. So in Inside Out 2, the new emotion is anxiety, is introduced. And anxiety is doing everything it can to make sure reality conforms to what it wants to happen. And then, the movie, I've been watching Inside Out 2 a lot.
Does she go to college? Go to a college hockey camp?
She
or
goes
something
to, she's going to high school. She's going into
okay.
high school, hitting puberty. And so puberty hits with anxiety and envy and all these whole new emotions are integrated into the movie. But anxiety is the main protagonist, which is so fitting for 2024, right?
Yeah.
And it tries to control everything and stuff all the feelings in the back, and it's just fascinating I've watched the movie half a dozen times with my daughter, and I'm like, I love this movie because it is actually helpful, right? And every other, don't get me started on Disney, but they really are. I think you nailed it on the head. Recognizing reality is something that we have to accept, and we can discipline ourselves to engage in a helpful way to our society. And so she has some friends in the movie that she throws to the side because anxiety tells her, oh, this is the plot to get what we want. I need to ditch everyone and just focus on myself. Yeah. And then she recognizes, as the story continues to unfold, it's actually no,
my relationships with my parents and my friends are what are going to help me get to the thing that I want to get to. I will say there is an overemphasis on what makes me happy.
Right.
You know, which we're going to have a little bit of that. We got to eat the meat and spit out the bones. But
Right.
it is fascinating that this thing that we know is objective because it was ordained by God as good for us is still prominent in something like this movie. So yeah, I was happy to see that on the list first. I was like, yeah, that's a good movie.
Yeah, you've hit my kryptonite. Movie references, dude, will always have been and always will be just horrendous subject for me because I just don't watch movies. I do think it's interesting, though, when you think about even trying to teach my kids, like, okay, this is going to happen whether you're sad or happy or however you feel about it, it's going to happen. That's a lot of, like, your kid's life is like, you are going to get in the car and we've got to go. And sometimes you're happy about it. Sometimes you're sad about it. We got to go either way.
Right.
So, you know.
I spend a lot of time so Piper's, I don't know where she picked this up, but she'll just tell me how certain things that I'm doing or we're doing make her feel. It's usually sad. Dad, when we do this, it makes me sad. When you say this, it makes me sad. And I usually just respond, that's too bad.
Yeah.
Like,
well, yeah,
your sadness is not going to change the circumstances here.
Yeah.
We're still going to go to church. We're still going to, clean up the food. We're still going to.
And you and I are probably the two worst people to, like, try to coach a very emotional, like, little girl.
But I think that's what they need.
Yeah. And
I think they need to be taught your emotions have no bearing on your responsibilities in this moment.
Yeah.
You made this mess. You're going to clean it up. If you cry, you can cry. But you're still going to clean it up.
It's just going to make it take a little bit longer and be less pleasant. Yeah. Well, and like Penny today said, Dad, I just felt the tears coming and I could not stop them. It's like, well, yeah, sometimes that happens. Hasn't happened to Daddy in a long time, but I do know what you're talking about. Yeah. You know, but yeah, it's the same idea of, like, yes, I understand there's tears coming and sometimes you can't stop them and you might need to take a minute, but we are still going to eat this food. We're still going to get in this car, whatever. It must be done. Right. So,
whereas some of the, now we're back kind of on the parenting thing, but some of the predominant parenting philosophy today is that you indulge those emotions. The kids' emotions determine what you do, how you do it. The kid gets what they want.
Yeah.
Your goal is to help them understand and express their emotional life instead of teaching them how to conform their emotional life to the world, to reality, to right and wrong.
Well, and those aren't even mutually exclusive. Like, to conform your emotions, you have to at least understand them and what's going on.
But you don't have to express and act on them.
Yeah. So, like, the experience and awareness of there are tears coming, like, okay, something's happening externally and internally. And then that starts the process of, do these match up and should this be happening?
Right.
And, for a 3-year-old little girl, it's hard to, change course.
Right.
But at some point, for her to understand that there is a steering wheel in there and to learn to grip it and move it a little bit.
Right.
And sometimes it's harder to move than others.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have power steering and sometimes you don't.
Your emotions feel like a pretty unwieldy horse right now, but you're going to break that horse. You're going to learn to ride it someday.
Yeah.
And I'm going to teach you how.
Yeah.
That's good. Okay, next movie. Up.
Okay, here we go.
Love it.
This will be
Jerry's in this.
Love it.
Jerry
This is old enough.
It's got a Boy Scout in it.
That's right.
It is. The Eagle Scout in Jerry is coming out. So Carl Fredricksen, he's old. He's old as dirt. He loves his wife. They have a great love story, and then she dies. It's the saddest Pixar
I'm gonna
movie.
cry right
We
now,
watched
bro.
this I watched this with Piper a week ago, and I'm trying not to tear up. I'm sitting on the couch.
My
with
wife
it.
and I have, like, one scrapbook, like, one thing we do together. Someone bought it for us, and we're like, this is what we're going to do. It's the Up book.
Yo.
And anytime we travel, we buy stickers, and we very low commitment. We just put the stickers in the book,
Dude.
and right where we got the sticker.
Got 'em.
But yes, after that and watching this movie the last time, I was like, oh man.
Yeah. So Carl and his wife, they are adventurers at heart. They watched this video when they're kids. Didn't they meet in, like, a movie theater? Isn't that the beginning of the movie?
That sounds
They're
right,
watching
yeah.
this movie about whatever the adventurer's name is.
Yeah.
And they meet, and they're both just kind of nut jobs about getting to Paradise Falls. We got to get to this mythical place. And so they have this dream their whole life, but then life goes on, and they don't have enough money, and they keep saving up money, and then they got to spend all their money on,
It gets
on
realer
real life.
every year to me, bro.
Oh, the savings account.
Is this a documentary?
And then his wife dies, and so now it's Carl, and he's at the end of his life, and they're trying to kick him out of his house because they're building a skyscraper on top of his lot, and
Middle of New York.
yeah, and so he attaches 1 billion balloons to his house, and the physics minor in me is driven crazy by that part of the story, but he attaches a bunch of balloons. No, it wouldn't work. Just so you know.
Redid the foundation of the house.
And then he flies off, and he flies up into the sky, and somehow he lands. He lands in the same place that he's been searching for his whole life, I guess. But along the way, this Boy Scout was hiding under the deck, so now he's got the Boy Scout. And then they land, and they meet this dog, this talking dog, because he's got a collar on that helps him talk. So now it's Carl, and it's a Boy Scout, and it's a dog, and all Carl wants to do is get his floating house to the Paradise Falls. That's his whole, it's his whole reason for living anymore. And then as the story goes on, the adventurer from the beginning ends up being a bad guy, and they have some conflict, and Carl is forced to choose between his lifelong dream of getting his house to Paradise Falls versus protecting Russell, the Boy Scout, and protecting Doug, the talking dog, or saving them, adopting them into his family. And so he's faced with this crisis moment, and he, in the heroic moment of the story, he chooses to let go of his personal dream in order to provide for Russell and Doug, save them and protect them. And so I think that movie does a really great job of showing you that true meaning is not found in just pursuing your dream, even if it's been a lifelong dream, even if it's your deceased wife's dream.
Yeah.
Meaning is found in blessing others, giving your life for other people, laying your life down for others. So any thoughts about Up?
Well, the undertone of that story too is, you at some point in the story you start thinking, okay, once he makes it, then what does he do with his life? Right. Like, he's old, he's alone, he's got
Starves
one
to
job.
death at the top of
You know what I mean?
waterfall.
Like, okay, I've got and it starts to become real of like, okay, all I want to do is just retire and sit on the beach. And it's like, okay, well, once you get there, then what do? Do you just like shrivel up and die? And with the addition of Russell and Doug, it's like, okay, this is his reason to keep living. Like, you gotta have some sort of motivation, some sort of something to keep you going. And yeah, even when you retire, you got to do something.
Right.
You model trains or like whatever.
Right.
I mean, you got to do something. So that's what I was thinking of. It's kind of the undertone that I think of when I watch it.
Yeah.
I loved your recap of the movie. It was more engaging than the movie itself.
Well, we're getting late into the night, so I'm getting more blunt.
Your creative is really coming out tonight. But I think it is fascinating. We started this segment on I don't know why, but Pixar is on to something.
Yeah.
And I said on the last one, but there is something real out there that we have written on our hearts. Right? And
they've tapped into something transcendentally true.
yes. And this is a simple story. Mm-hmm. I love listening to you explain why an old man is giving up his life for a dog. But it's so good, right? It's so good to hear that and look around our church and see faces and stories that pair. There's everyone in that room has laid their life down for someone else in our community, and
giving up promotions, giving up dreams
for 130 college students tonight. Or even to think about the church plant that we sent out 2 years ago, laying their life down to do what y'all did to move to Missoula, right? Man, it is so much better. It is so much better in there's seasons. Everything comes and goes in waves and seasons, and a lot of us are in heck of a season with some toddlers that are figuring out how to integrate themselves into this world. But yeah, thank God that
that is true, and that we know. We can look around church and see so many people that have tasted and seen that time and time again. So, good reminder. If you're ever down the dumps, watch the movie.
Well, the first part will put you way further in the dumps, but you just gotta hang on.
That's right.
Well, and what was the footnote of your description is actually a main point too. Of when he gets to Paradise Falls, the dude that he's been idolizing his whole life turns out to be a total dirtbag.
Yeah.
And like the absolute
because he's
villain
living
of the
in
movie.
isolation.
Yeah,
for 40 years.
And it's like the message of like, okay, you can build things up in your mind all you want. The reality can be totally different, and it might not be what you think at all. And so
you have this grass is greener picture, and it may not correspond with reality.
The location and the person,
Right.
of like, if I just meet my hero, everything will be all right, and shake his hand and hear his stories. It's like, dude didn't even want to be in the same room as him, so.
Yeah. Okay, the last one, and this one actually thematically is very similar to Up. That some of the details are different, but the last one is Coco. You guys seen Coco?
Yeah, strike two for me,
haven't.
bro.
Yeah.
Neither of you guys have seen Coco?
I haven't seen Coco.
Coco's
but
actually pretty good.
It's got skeletons, so it's too scary.
It is probably too scary for our girls, but you should watch it by yourself. So it's
Too scary.
I think a lot of Christians are pushed away by it because of the Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead.
Yeah, that's
Mexican
why
stuff.
I didn't listen to it.
Yeah, exactly.
You're too scared.
I'm too holy.
So,
Don't want to bring that into my house.
okay, well then you guys got to listen to this summary because
Okay.
you don't know what the movie's about.
Better do a good job.
I was
All right,
captivated on the last one.
I'll try. So in this one, instead of an old guy, it's a boy named Miguel. So he's a little boy. I don't know how old he is. 12 years old, something like that. He's a little Mexican boy, and his dream is to be a famous musician. It's all he wants. He's got his guitar, and all he wants to be is a famous musician. And he looks up to this hero in I don't know if it's the village or the family or something like that, but this hero musician that he wants to be like, but this guy has since passed. And so some stuff happened in their family history where his family now basically has banned music. So Miguel wants to be a musician, but his whole family says you can't play music, you can't be a musician, we're not going to let you do it. And so you would think, being a movie consumer in this day and age, from like 10 minutes in, you would think you know where the movie's going, right? Miguel's going to say, screw you to my family, he's going to go chase his dream, and someday
If it was
his
a
family...
Disney movie.
Right, if it was a Disney movie, he would pursue his dream, and then someday his family would come back and apologize and, rally around his dream. But it's not. It's a Pixar movie.
That's right.
So what ends up happening is they have this holiday, Dia de los Muertos, and somehow he goes into the realm of the dead, this skeleton world, or the ghost world, and he gets to meet his hero, the guy that he's always looked up to, and he realizes, just like Carl in Up, that this guy is horrible. He's a total dirtbag. He's a total crook. He's the one who did all the wrong to his family. And so Miguel is on this. He's on this journey. He meets his hero, who ends up being a bad guy, and he realizes that pursuing his personal dream of being a musician at the expense of his family is going to turn him into the same monster that his hero became. Ernesto de la Cruz, I think was his name. So Miguel sees that clearly and decides instead to reject his dream of becoming this famous traveling musician, and instead decides to honor his family in order to find meaning for his life. So he brings some of the family story back to his family and lets them know what really happened now that he's been able to talk to or interact with the dead or something like that. And so anyway, the main point is that Miguel rejects pursuing his personal dream in favor of honoring his family and submitting to his family's wishes. And I think it's a pretty cool picture of this same thing. Again, it's very similar to the theme of Up, but it's like your dreams need to be subordinate to your place in the world, your place in your family, your place in your community.
Yeah.
Those are more important things than you pursuing your dream. And so if pursuing your dream makes you a monster to those institutions, your job is to give it up.
Yeah.
Your job is to let go of that dream, or at least let that dream shift and change into something that does work and is honorable to your family. So I know you guys haven't seen it, but any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I was gonna shout out. I was gonna give Disney a shout out. They do deserve one. If you've seen Encanto,
Yeah.
it has some similar themes along over time. I'm not going to describe all of it, but the commitment to the family for the betterment of the community is like the final message in Encanto. Spoiler, but it is like it's a great movie. Probably
It is
not
a
as
good
good
one.
as Coco, but it is in the same like vein, right, of the commitment to which it's man, as we've been debunking these and talking about these, I'm perplexed that they exist in our society.
Right.
How do these messages exist in our society if every corner you look? I guess maybe because we're so inundated in the college world, because I think that's the source of a lot of the individualistic messages. But yeah, it like to think of these movies in that context sort of makes me think there's someone out here who gets this, because
Right.
people are watching these movies and loving them.
Well, again, I think Pixar has inadvertently tapped into the true story,
Yeah,
the real story.
yeah,
Yeah. Or even like maybe at a rudimentary level, a broken clock is right twice a day. Like if you make enough movies, you got to hit it at least once.
that might be
You know.
true.
well, we did quote Disney.
Yeah. So
I
yeah.
did give Disney a little airtime.
Well, I was thinking as you were describing that movie, like even it requires it behooves you to do some examination of like, okay, I want to be famous. Why though? Like, I want the admiration. Well, you've received admiration from a different place. Like you already have admiration of your family, but you're willing to give that up for the admiration of strangers.
Right.
And I think of that even with like our peers, seeking a better career, more money, or whatever.
Right.
It's like what you're not seeking the money, you're seeking the comfort of not having to worry about things. And broke people don't worry. Some broke people don't worry about things either. Like, so.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. So it's like if you're just seeking, you got to drill down to see like what do I actually want? Because I don't know if I want a ton of money. Because then I have to try to not be greedy. Right. Maybe I just want to not have to worry about if I can pay my bills anymore.
Right.
And that can come from a different place. Maybe I should just be smarter with what I do have instead of just trying to make
Have
more and
fewer
more.
bills.
Yeah. Have fewer and smaller bills.
Cancel your Disney Plus.
Yeah,
Practical action step.
There we go.
Animal. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a good application. All right, guys. Well, I don't know how long we've gone, but it's been plenty long. Longer than I anticipated.
Yeah.
We'll see what these turn into as weeks go by. I don't anticipate they'll all be this long, but I want to have some rhythm of reflecting on our sermons, reflecting on what we're learning on Sundays,
Yeah.
whether I'm preaching or somebody else is preaching. So thank you guys for leading us off and taking us through it.
Anytime.
We'll see if anybody listens to the whole thing.
The feedback will be boo, too long. Boo, Jared and Austin.
We'll put some Easter eggs in there. We put some Easter eggs in there
Yeah.
so we get to the end.
Yeah, maybe I'll edit in some stuff.
There you go.
Some special. If you've listened this far, text Preston, you get a $5.
Big different guy.
Yeah. All right.
Cool. Thanks.
Well, thank
Preston.
you guys.
Yeah, this was great.
We'll talk to you again soon.
Okay.